to summarize what I found in the previous video, everything in the radio was working okay. I was getting an IF signal coming out here, and when I fed a signal into here, I was getting an audio signal out of the final tube, power amp. The signal wasn't going through here for some reason. The tube was dead. So what we had was a dead tube, and yet I tested it and it was fine. So as I said, I had it should be 24 volts there. I was getting 80. So I was going through all the capacitors to see if capacitors and resistors had changed all along that power supply, but everything seemed to be okay. So I just happened to look in the cabinet of the radio, and there was a tube diagram, and it said this should have a 1U5 instead of a 1S5. The tube that I replaced, I couldn't read any of the lettering on it, so I was just blind. I was just relying on the schematic. It turns out that this radio must be a later or earlier version than is shown on the schematic. So this tube uses a 1U5 tube. So as soon as I put a 1U5 tube in there, the radio came to life. And that voltage, 24 volts on the plate. Close enough, 21.49. So the radio is working quite well now. It got good volume,
see what happens.
Good sensitivity. So I'm going to now change the radio, put it back in to the case. But before I do that, I'm going to take some coloring and restore the black leatherette to make it look as good as I can. So in order to restore this, the luster of this cabinet, it's kind of spotty, I use this Shoe Shine Care Liquid Shine. It has a nice smell, and it goes on and leaves a nice, almost immediately, it gives a nice sheen. So I'll do this to the whole cabinet, and we'll see what it looks like once I've finished. You just have to keep on circling and go for the areas, because this is dried up. This material is basically I think it's canvas with some kind of a rubber in it, or rubber paint or something. I don't really know, but anyway, this stuff makes them really look good. So we'll just go through that and see what it looks like afterwards. There, I've done the top. It looks really nice. Once it dries, it has a nice even sheen. Even around where the antenna is, that looked kind of scuffed. So now I'll do the rest. The front in parts is kind of scuffed, so I'll just go over it with that shoe dye and see what happens. It usually helps to put a few layers on. You just take your time, and it'll look much better. With this, it's like a light applicator sponge. You just put light pressure on it. You don't put too much on it because the sponge will tear. So in a situation like that, around the handle there, or the latch, you just want to do it a few times to make it all appear even. The corners are the parts that get scuffed. The sides look pretty good. So I'm just putting a coating on the side, even although it looks pretty good, but so that it evens out. So it evens out with the corners there. So there, that ends up looking pretty good. The back of this radio was pretty scuffed. It's got some scrapes. So I'll put some on all over it. I'll do it all evenly and uniformly. Putting the radio chassis back in the cabinet is very difficult. You want to loosen this or completely take it out, this antenna here, the whip. And you don't want to have any contact with these. You want to be as careful as anything, because these coils are very delicate, and if they move, they can be off frequency. So take your time when you're putting this back in again. Very important. So I put the radio back in the case without damaging anything, and I just did some gluing. This leatherette had turned over, and so I glued it back in, and the corner of the diagram showing the tubes had come up. It needed to be re-glued too. So that's the one where I originally saw that I had two different radios here, two different versions of the same radio. That's where I found out. I noticed right inside there that the 1U5 tube was the one instead of the 1S5. Here are right behind here are the tubes, 1S5 and the final tube. So anyway, this radio seems to be working quite well. Once it dried, the leatherette really looks good now. Looks really nice. So the radio is really working well right now, and all the shortwave bands seem to be working. So this radio is pretty well restored.